If people were to ask me, like, what's it about? I think the easy answer would be something along the lines of, how do we etch out what a good king is? I think we can do that. That's great. And I have no problem with it. I think what the poem is really trying to get us to focus on is the temporary nature of this world. No matter what great things you do, whatever glory you want, however awesome you are, it's gone. Beowulf is written in what we know as Old English. Hwas we gar dana and yar dagum, theod kuninga thrum je frunon, hurtha athalingus ellen fremedon. Probably written between, oh goodness, I'll be really early here, 650 and 1000. We have the manuscript, which we know is produced at around 1000. That's a nice round date. And we only have one copy of the manuscript, which was saved from the Ashburnham fire of 1731. One copy. In fact, the manuscript was damaged by this fire. If we had lost that manuscript in the fire, it's gone. We would have never known of it. There are no real references to it. One of the most beautiful, I think, pieces of poetry, it comes in the first 100 lines whenever it talks about the building of Heorot, this great, glorious mead hall that's world famous. I'll read it translated. He whose word had power everywhere said its name, Heorot. He broke no promises, but dealt out rings, treasures at his table. That's a good lord. You give people stuff. That's how you get loyalty. You make them rich. The richer they are, the better you are. You're happy for them. Okay. This is it. The hall towered high, cliff-like, horn-gabled. Half line. Ready? Awaited the war flames, malicious burning. It was still not the time for the sharp-edged hate of his sworn son-in-law to rise against Hrothgar in murderous rage. You're like, what kind of literature am I reading? We just took us from the pinnacle of the glory of this thing, and at a half line, you switched it to its destruction. The poem's just letting you know, you think this thing's awesome? It's nothing. Vanity of vanities, baby. Breath of breath, hovel of hovel. But that's what Old English literature will remind you of repeatedly. The story of the poem's pretty simple. There is a great hall known as Heorot, and it's a beautiful, magnificent hall. It's built by King Hrothgar. There is a monstrous entity known as Grendel, who, for whatever reason, we're told he doesn't like the sounds of joy and happiness, and he doesn't like the songs of creation that are being sung. We're told he comes from the kin of Cain, so that means he's a kin killer, which in Anglo-Saxon literature, the one thing you do not want to be is a kin killer at all whatsoever. You can't kill your own blood. You can't kill someone related to you. Grendel hears all of the joy of the mead hall because there's no war going on. But he hates it because he's excluded. Like, and they're singing these songs of his kin, the kin of Cain, being wiped out. So he just goes in and he eats people. He just destroys them, rips them apart. And they have to close down Heorot. Beowulf hears about it. He shows up. He tells Hrothgar, so I hear you have a monster problem. Turns out, I'm kind of a monster killer. Let me take care of this problem for you. And Hrothgar's like, well, that's pretty awesome. Yes, please take care of my monster problem. Beowulf takes care of Grendel, rips his arm off barehanded, which is awesome. Then all of a sudden Hrothgar comes back and he's like, oh, that was great. Thanks for taking care of our problems. Oh yeah, we forgot to tell you, he has a mother. And she's even worse than he is. And the mother comes in and just slaughters people. Takes Hrothgar's favorite guy, rips his head off, decapitates him, eats people, goes down, and then of course Beowulf has to go chase her down. He kills the other monster. Hrothgar's like, this is fantastic, you've destroyed the monsters for us. And they're monstrous. In particular, the poem reminds us repeatedly that they wanted no man pay. They would not accept payment. In other words, their monstrosity is predicated upon, there's no way of ending this feud other than total annihilation. For me, the definition of monstrosity in the Middle Ages is that it blurs the lines of distinction. It would be great if he were just simply otherwise, but he's not. There's something of the human in him. The Grendels, I'll just call them the Grendels. The Grendels are monstrous because they're both human-like, but they refuse to participate in these human communities. They're just about pure annihilation and pure war. That's all they want, which is important because the third part of the poem is Beowulf when he's old and he's a king. And he has a dragon who comes and attacks a mead hall because there's a guy who steals a goblet. He's pissed. He burns down Beowulf's hall. Beowulf's like, I'm not tolerating this. Let's go. I'm going to go get him. This is Beowulf after he's been a king for 50 years, so he's pretty old. And he tells his young warriors, like, I don't need you. This isn't for you. This is for me. I'm a hero. This is the problem of the poem, because you have to ask, are you a hero or are you a king? That's a huge question. Those are two very different categories. Beowulf always seems to want to be the hero, which, again, he's kept his kingdom in peace for 50 years because everyone's terrified of him. He fights battles for his kingdom. He wipes people out for his kingdom. But he also doesn't train people up. There's nothing in place in the kingdom after Beowulf. This is my own reading of what I think is an internal critique of the poem. If we're asking what it's about, I think sometimes we can ask, one of the things that may be wondering about is, what's the role of a hero, a warrior? What's the role of a king? And these may be two very, very different roles we're looking for in this world. So it's wonderful to see Beowulf, the hero in the first half of the poem, kind of kicking ass, taking names, taking out monsters, versus what does Beowulf the king look like? Well, it turns out it looks almost identical to Beowulf as a hero. In fact, his right-hand man at the very, very end of the poem, he asks, like, do we all suffer because of the pride of the actions, the deeds of one man? And it's like, yeah, we did. He needed this. We don't know why, but we're all suffering because of this sort of thing. Oh, goodness. Last line of the poem is, I think it's one of the finest last lines in all of Old English. Und lof 𝘽𝙚𝙤𝙪𝙡𝙛. Lof means something along the lines of reputation, glory. 𝘽𝙚𝙤𝙪𝙡𝙛 means most yearning. It's literally where we get our word yearning. 𝘽𝙚. Most yearning for reputation. That could be a good thing if you want to be known as the most gracious lord ever, or it could be a bad thing if you just want to be known as a badass in this world. At the end, what does Beowulf want to see whenever he's ready to die as a king? Bring me the gold. Let me see the gold. Let it fill me up. There are some things there in the poem where I think the poem's sitting there going, I don't know that this is right. That's Hrothgar's advice to Beowulf. He says, when you become king, you got to realize, man, there are temporary things, there are eternal things. So when Beowulf says, bring me the gold, let me see it, I think that's the poem's way of going, yeah, he's a little attached to this world. He doesn't understand the transient for the transient. He doesn't understand the eternal for the eternal. He's maybe mixing things up. Anybody who's, a scholar in Old English, now I'm going to irritate them. But I'll say this. I do think it's a Christian poem. Not explicitly so, but I think there's a true Christian ethos there. And then the question becomes whether or not Beowulf, the character, upholds those kind of Anglo-Saxon Christian standards. Or even better, you can extract that. Does he even hold up the dramatic, heroic, kingly ethos? I don't know that he does that either. I don't know that he's theoretically a good king in either direction, be it Christian or Germanic. Practically speaking, I think he is. Give me 50 years of peace in that world, because he just takes on everybody and destroys them, and everybody knows you don't mess with Beowulf. 50 years of peace because he's done that. Practically speaking, it's like, well, that's pretty awesome. But the other kings that are good kings in the poem, they don't do it that way. They do it a very different way. They're generous. To be a good king, you know what you are first and foremost? You're generous. You want people to love you. Whatever way in which they are wealthy and powerful in this world is a refraction, not reflection, a refraction of your own power because you gave it to them. You want loyalty. Loyalty is the chief virtue, I think, in Old English poetry. And so if people were to ask me, like, what's it about? I would think it's more than just a celebration of heroism or the Germanic heroic ethos, more than it is a critique of that, because it may be. But if I could just reorient readers to just go read this poem in the glory of heroism and maybe what it means to be a king, I don't want to take that away from readers. But I want you to really think about what is the relationship between the transience of existence and the eternal soul. Like, what's your purpose in this world? What's your pole star? What are you aiming for? And I think that's maybe where the poem, even though Beowulf's the obvious hero, a good king, I'll even call him a good king, but I think there are missteps because he doesn't keep his eye on the eternal prize. I think he absorbs that heroic culture. If we can wrap our head around the tension between the transient and the eternal, and usually we want to make excuses for why we want to do the transient things, because it's good and it does this and it does that. And that may be true, but you have to ask: is it lo fiernost? Are you most eager for fame? Is that why we do these things? Or do we have our eye on the... And the eye on the prize are the invisible spiritual things. I think that's the real tension of the poem.